Hey guys, this is your body code practitioner Emmanuel here in Lehi, Utah. Just want to do a reading here with you guys. I want to be consistent and to read with you who are looking at the new book, The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson, updated and expanded, forwarded by Tony Robbins. Very impressive. And we're going to start off with, we're on page 36, and this talks about, did trapped emotions kill Dana Reeve? On a side note, I use Dana Reeve almost every single time I mention the emotion code, just because it's a good example of Western medicine not knowing why someone would die of lung cancer if there's no history. And as you'll see in the story, it just makes a lot of sense that not every answer is presented to us in traditional medicine, and that there must be something else that causes something. Everything has a cause and effect. So why the effect of lung cancer for Dana Reeve? And so it makes people open their mind and be like, yeah, why did she die? So anyway, here we go, page 36. In 1995, the famous actor Christopher Reeve became paralyzed from the neck down following a horse riding accident. Many people were touched by the unfailing devotion of his wife, Dana, and were shocked and saddened when she died at the age of 44, less than 18 months after her husband's death. Dana Reeve was a non-smoker who died of lung cancer. And although conventional wisdom holds that her death was due to secondhand smoke, I believe otherwise. The lungs produce the emotion we call grief, and an overabundance of grief will certainly lead to the creation of trapped emotions, often affecting the parent organ. Dana Reeve certainly had reason to grieve, and I believe that trapped emotions, grief among them, were at least partly responsible for her death, and perhaps entirely responsible. Another example can be found in the way that alcohol affects people. We all know that people who become alcoholics often die of liver disease. But we also know that many people who drink can become quite angry and violent under the influence. Alcohol is broken down and processed by the liver, and too much alcohol overstimulates the liver. When you ever overstimulate or overload an organ, it will produce more of the emotion that it's designed to produce. The liver produces feelings of anger, among others. This is the mechanism that is often at work when drinking results in violence. On a side note, when I do mention an example of an organ producing a trapped emotions with an S, I always do mention the liver. I don't know why, but I always say, when someone says, what is the emotion code? I always say, in long story short, I keep it very simple. I say, it's a chiropractor named Dr. Bradley Nelson, who's been around for 20 years in his own work and was looking for ways to help out people who are dealing with chronic illnesses and chronic diseases. He was inspired to look into ancient cultures and to organize a system where it basically shows how our organs and glands are producing these emotional energies. For example, liver produces anger, bitterness, guilt, hatred, resentment. That's why when people drink alcohol or they drink too much caffeine, what can come easily out is anger, bitterness, guilt, hatred, resentment. You see how I do that? So that's kind of, when someone asks me for a 3-minute spiel, I usually use the liver. I usually use some emotions, and they know. Trust me, they know people that drink alcohol, and they know people who drink too much caffeine. So, and that they go from 0 to 10 very quickly. So, again, a lot of people can relate to the liver, and people drinking alcohol or people addicted to caffeine. And so, anyway, so let's go back to the book here. If you have an organ that is diseased, overloaded, or imbalanced in some way, the emotions created by that organ will often be more frequent and more intense. Trapped emotions are always found to have emanated from a particular organ, no matter where that trapped emotion lodges in the body. For example, a trapped emotion of anger may have originally emanated from your liver, but it may come to rest anywhere in your body. It's important to realize that any emotion that becomes a trapped emotion may lodge literally anywhere in the body. Correlations between the organs and our emotions are both fascinating and important to our understanding of how our bodies really work. It all goes back to the ancient art of energy healing. Energy medicine. Energy healing is one of the oldest practices known in the world today. Since 4000 BCE, healers have understood that our health greatly depends on the quality of energy that flows through and makes up in our bodies. In Chinese medicine, the energy that is called qi or qi. In ancient Indian and Ayurvedic medicine, the energy is called prana. Imbalances in this energy may deeply affect our physical and mental health. Again, I mentioned this before in the last side note here. I mentioned this in the last video that I made, that ancient medicine is coming back. So again, we have to be able to communicate that we aren't something new. I think it's very, very important more and more as we find skeptical people. And you know what? I want to kind of challenge you guys too to I know most of you guys think that who's going to believe in this, and this is why we have to give free sessions and blah blah blah. I want to challenge something else to you. I want to let you guys know that in many respects we already have baby boomers who are suffering from illnesses, depression. They've tried Western medicine. So before we even need to commercialize ourselves, what's already been advertised for us is their personal experience that Western medicine didn't work for them, and that it's not a preventative lifestyle, that it has to do with emergency code red issues, and that sometimes their doctors misdiagnosed them. Sometimes the depression pills gave them fatigue, and then they have now they're taking fatigue pills, and now they're going through a merry-go-round. So do you guys know what I'm coming from? Is that the advertisement for emotion code and energy healing is it's what people are now starting to fall back on due to the fact that they were taught to use Western medicine in the forefront and it didn't work for them. I'll say it again. The advertisement that we need for energy healing is not, I have to convince you, I have to convince you. We don't have to do that. It's the fact that, trust me, they've seen their parents deal with illnesses and issues. Without holistic medicine, we have that result. Mental illness or supposedly mental disease and stuff like that. How did they challenge that issue? Probably with psychologists and medication. And how did that work for them? Did it work? How effective really was it? Again, guys, we have that. People have already some sort of reference of using traditional ways of healing. And now, because they have that, they're more open to us because I've never heard of what you guys are doing. I've never heard of emotion code. How is this different from regular therapy? How is this different from Western medicine? Then we can talk about it. Not out of a convincing mode, because trust me, we don't have, once you do a free session with someone and you work on their pain, you don't have to convince them anymore. It's kind of like that's the bread and butter is let me remove some pain for you. Anyway, so back to the book. We can compare this energy to electricity. We can't see electricity, but we can feel it. Electricity is colorless and odorless. It is invisible, yet it certainly is real. If you ever stuck your finger in a light socket or ever been shocked getting the toast out of a toaster, then you know what I mean. As human beings, we are used to perceiving things in a way that conforms to our belief systems. We form our beliefs about the physical world at an early age. We learn that if we fall off the monkey bars at school, we will meet the ground with a painful thud. Yet, we can never imagine that both the ground and the monkey bars, as solid as they seem to us, are actually made of vibrating energies. We may like to think that the world around us is exactly as we are used to seeing, but Einstein, Tesla, and others have shown us that the universe is really much more complex and wonderful than we ever could have imagined. The quantum world. We're on page 37 now. You've probably heard that old saying, I know it's the back of my mind, or I know it like the back of my hand. But how well do you really know the back of your hand? Take a look at it. Your eyes see the surface of your skin with its wrinkles, fingernails, and little hairs. You know exactly how the back of your hand looks from that perspective. But if you magnify your hand under a microscope, you won't see the same skin and creases you've been so familiar with. Instead, you might think you are looking at the surface of a strange planet covered with hills and valleys. Turn up the power in your microscope, magnifying your skin 20,000 times. You'll see a field of swarming, hold on a second here. You'll see a sea of swarming cells. Magnify it a lot more, you'll see molecules. Magnify these molecules, and you'll see the atoms that make up those molecules. Magnify these atoms, you'll see the subatomic energy clouds that make up these atoms, the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, and other subatomic particles. It's still technically the back of your hand, but it looks nothing like the hand you know. If you glance at it now, your hand looks solid. Slap it on the table, it makes a nice substantial thud. Your hand may seem solid, but there's actually a lot of empty space there. At the subatomic level, there are vast distances between each spinning electron. Atoms are 99.999999% empty space. Your hand is 99.999999% empty space. If you could remove all the empty space from these atoms, your hand would become so small you would need a microscope to see it. It would virtually disappear, although it would still weigh the same and contain the same number of atoms. It might take you a moment to comprehend this idea. Your hand seems solid, but it is made out of dynamic energy and constant vibration. In fact, physicists now understand that so-called subatomic particles that make up the atom are not really particles at all. They measure the contents of the atom in energy units instead, because it's so much more accurate. Thoughts are energy. Like everything else in the universe, the thoughts that you create are made of energy. Thought energy has no boundary. Your thoughts are not confined to a certain volume and location like your physical body. While we like to think that all of our unspoken thoughts are private and that they are confined to our own heads, it's not true. Each of us is like a radio station, constantly broadcasting the energy of our thoughts, which emanate from us and fill the immensity of space, touching all those around us for good or for ill. That doesn't mean that we can read other people's minds. Well, that is interesting because, on a side note here, if you are someone who's interested in psychic abilities, I remember today I was getting a haircut. As you can see, I got a haircut today. And then I was just talking to her and I said, so you have some siblings and everything? She's like, yeah, I do. I'm like, let me guess, 2 brothers. She's like, I do. I was like, yeah, one's older, one's younger than you. Like, you're a middle child? She's like, yeah, I am. She's like, how'd you know that? And it just came to me. Like, it just, and the reason why is because a couple months ago, I worked on something that said, I'm using my highest form of psychic abilities. And I was around a 37%. I got that to 100%. And I would do it with my friend, my friend Jess. I would say something like to the extent of, hey, your friend was drinking Dr. Pepper in that photo, right? She's like, how'd you know it's Dr. Pepper? But I usually mainly use that for helping people in my healing sessions, because I can say, for example, oh, you have a despair anchor. And so if you have a despair anchor, that means you have a negative statement. And technically I like to kind of like ask, what is this negative statement? And what I would do in my mind is I would pray about it. I'd find out the emotion that's the theme of that despair anchor, and then I would hear the person's voice, almost like I would actually hear their voice. And I would be like, I'm not good enough. It's like, okay, I'm not good enough. That's what it is. You see, or like nobody likes me. Okay, that's a despair anchor. And I would hear it, or I would just kind of like know it in some ways. And so these powers that you have are not meant to like show off, and so that's why I was having fun with that one girl, but I mean, that's not really what I use it for. I use it to help out clients. So if you're someone who's a practitioner, or if you're someone that works with a lot of clients, you may want to increase your intuition. You may want to increase your psychic abilities using the body code, making a statement, finding the percentage of how much your body believes it due to energetic trauma, and then move it using the body code. And you'll see how it'll benefit you and help others. Anyway, back to the book. This doesn't mean that we can read other people's minds, but the energy of other people's thoughts is detected to some degree on a subconscious level. Try staring intently at the back of someone's head in a crowd. Inevitably, they will turn and look right at you before long. I've had this experience. If you haven't, try it. It works every time. We are all connected. The reality is the entire human family is connected by energy. When people are suffering and dying on the other side of the planet, we feel their distant cries and anguish on a subconscious level, and we are darkened by it. When something tragic happens in the world, the whole world feels it subconsciously. It's affected by it. On the other hand, when wonderful things happen in the world, we are all brightened together. The connectedness that we all have will often manifest as subtle thoughts that float up from the subconscious level to our conscious minds. The energy connection seems strongest between a mother and her children. Mothers often seem to be able to sense when one of their children is in trouble. We call this mother's intuition. And my own mother had it in spades. Our connection to our mothers is perhaps strongest because of its spiritual umbilical cord that binds us to them. A powerful example of this energetic connection, oh, by the way, speaking of spiritual umbilical cord, Dr. Brad did figure out how to cure, how do I say this? It's when women are being very nauseous in the morning sickness. Yeah, so he actually, he was praying, I think, about his third daughter. The third daughter. And he found out that there is some type of disconnection between the mother and the baby. The spiritual mother and the spiritual baby, physical mother, physical baby, spiritual fetus, physical, so the spiritual fetus to the mother, the physical fetus to the mother, could be the umbilical cord, the placenta. So just all these different things that there's sort of energetic cords, like these little cords connecting to the mom. And if any of these are disconnected, usually because there's some type of imbalance there, then the person starts having morning sickness. If you connect those chords all together, all of a sudden the morning sickness goes away. It's pretty neat. As far as I know, there's no cure for morning sickness. There's ways to lower it down. Dr. Brad's figured it out. The cure for it is due to spiritual or physical disconnection between mom and the child. So just wanted to throw that in there. Side note, he did mention spiritual umbilical cord, where we're all connected together. Back to the book. A powerful example of this energetic connection is what happened to one of the patients a number of years ago. She was sitting at home one night watching television with her husband. Suddenly, she began experiencing severe hammering pains throughout her body, which inexplicably moved from one area to another. The violence of the attack was terrifying, and when it was over, she was greatly relieved, but exhausted and frightened. She had never experienced anything like this before and had no idea what had gone wrong in her body. Her attempts to explain this bizarre and excruciating attack baffled everyone, including her doctor. 3 days later, she got a phone call from her son who was working in the Philippines. He was calling her from the hospital bed and told her that he'd been severely beaten by the local police a few days before. When they compared the time of his beating to the time of her experience, they were one and the same. Somehow, she was connected enough to her son to literally feel his pain, quote unquote. Talk about mother's intuition. All right, we're going to leave off on page 40 here. And it was great maybe sharing a couple of insights. Hopefully you learned something new. I will be here tomorrow to do a video for you guys as well. And hopefully you guys appreciated this. And again, buy this book, The Emotion Code by Dr. Brad. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And feel free to comment below any insights that you have. I know there's some healers out there watching this. If you have any personal insights to help out other emotion code, body code practitioners, feel free to drop that below. And feel free to subscribe. Click on that bell button down there. That way you get the ding. Sometimes I go live. I think on Saturdays I might be going live in order to answer some questions for you guys. So with that, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.